Hello, welcome to the RSA show. As you can see, we're down in numbers tonight. Ashley unfortunately couldn't make it, but she's always with us in amongst the chat and always part of the show. So fingers crossed we'll see her next time. But I'm joined by Ricky today, who I'm sure he's going to be a little bit happy about how things went on the weekend. Ricky, how you doing, pal?
All good, mate. Yes, like you said, obviously the result helped after a very late night. But I'll just say, Simon, Ashley, just like her team, the Patriots, she's gone missing.
Yeah. So Brady's gone, Belichick's gone, and now Ashley's gone. It's just, what are we gonna do? What are we gonna do? But I know, but anyway, just to kick things off after really what was just a superb game as far as I'm concerned. That it had everything really. So, and all I have to really is start off by saying, how about those Chiefs?
Oh yes, mate. I know. Like I said, already calling it a dynasty. I'll wait for a few more before that comes in. But yeah, hell of a game. Safe to say, my mate who I watched it with, 49ers fan, he wasn't happy come the end, but he was very gracious in defeat. So yeah, I think a very good team, and as usual, the man in the middle just knows how to get us over the line.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and we even talked about it last week. Really, it's when the chips are down, when your backs are against the wall, who you can rely on to make that play really, and lo and behold, Pat threw out a bit of magic again, but start of the game was a bit of a cagey start.
Yeah. No, you're right, mate. I think it wasn't very good view in the first quarter. We just couldn't get anything going. Defense kept us in the game. That's really, as they have done a lot this season, let's face it, the reason we made the playoffs was really because of that defense and that secondary. So yeah, no, don't know what was going on. We obviously, a certain man, I don't know if you're going to bring up later, had a bit of a hissy fit on offense, but yeah, it wasn't a great start. It definitely was not the smug one in the house in that first quarter. But yeah, I thought just the Purdy and the 49ers just started off brilliantly.
They did, yeah, no, they did, and they got off to a good start, and they seemed to be making plays, and from a neutral, it seemed like there was just almost a bit of frustration there from the sort of probably from both teams, but maybe the 49ers did a better job at the time of keeping their heads cool when necessary, really. But yeah, I found that with Purdy, and that they got off to a good start, and as we all expected, really, McCaffrey was going to get his touches, really, but there was probably some uncharacteristic mistakes on both teams, because you say with both McCaffrey and Pacheco had fumbles early in the game, and before this game, Pacheco had fumbled once this entire season, just once. So they've been absolutely rock solid, the pair of them. But I guess when you get to that stage, pressure builds up, and people tend to fold a little bit.
Yeah, well, as you said, obviously Pacheco was there last year, but it was a strange one. Both of them, obviously McCaffrey, the drive the 49ers were on there, that was a big loss because they'd made some good yardage straight away. So that was good for us. But yeah, Pacheco, like you say, he's a young boy, and I think luckily it wasn't a hangover for the whole game. But yeah, he definitely with that fumble when it looked like we were going to score as well. So I actually cursed him. So I'll take the blame for Pacheco, because I literally turned to my mate and I said, after Hardman took that long bomb from Mahomes, which we never see really anymore since Tyreek's gone, but when he took that, I turned to my mate and I said, well, at least we're going to get 3 points. And lo and behold, what happens? He fumbles it and the ball goes back to the 49ers. But yeah, something that can happen. Like you say, it's just uncharacteristic of both players. But yeah, I thought arguably, I know we came into it a bit in overtime in the last quarter, but they really did find a way to stop Pacheco in that game.
They did, yeah, they did, and even as we were speaking last week, the 49ers really, the defense has been a little bit shaky lately, and as it's been well documented, Kyle Shanahan and the defensive coaches have laid into them thick and said, their performances up until now have been embarrassing, and boy, how did they turn up really in this game really? And I mean, I feel like Pat was going to get killed out there at the beginning of the game with all these hits he was taking.
No, you're right. I think the caption came up when they were playing that he'd never been. I think he'd never been sacked or something in a Super Bowl or anything like that, and then straight away they came over and took him down with a sack. And yeah, I think Fred Warner had a great game, and I think that the front line of the 49ers are very good. Obviously, Bosa was keeping him in the away from going out to the sides all game. I thought he was brilliant. Armstead on the other side, he was fantastic as well. But yeah, I think they obviously had a plan. The plan was to stop Mahomes from drifting because that's when he's dangerous and when he can scramble. And yeah, for long parts of that game, it worked to perfection, and he was unable to get any movement. He was getting caught, he was getting sacked, he was having to throw intentional groundings. It wasn't the Mahomes we'd seen for the rest of the playoffs, where he just seemed to be able to get away from that defense.
Absolutely, and I think you hit the nail on the head with Bosa being those hard runs up the field, so he can't sort of roll out and try and get something on the edge, which they seem to do a really good job of. And yeah, as you said, like Fred Warner seemed to be throwing his head at everything, but unfortunately, probably the most unlucky man in the building that night must have been Dre Greenlaw. Who seemed to be found his way getting himself hurt, making his way to the pitch, not actually being on the pitch. Yeah,
no, I was laughing my head off, but just because of how weird it looked. He was doing some tiger thing on the floor. He looked really pumped up in that game all the time. He was all over the shop, and I'm not sure whether or not in the end that's come back to him, because obviously the 49ers. They're running onto the pitch after we've stopped their offense, and then just out of nowhere really, and obviously it took them out of the game. So yeah, I'm not sure. It was before Usher and Co wrecked the pitch, so you can't really blame that. But yeah, very strange one. But I was very happy to see him go off, because when you've got him and Warner in tandem coming at you, then it's a tough game. But yeah, I thought in general the 49ers were a bit unlucky with injuries. Even with the players who came back, they went off for a bit. So, yeah, very unfortunate for Greenlaw, but I did nearly choke on my drink at the time thinking, how's he managed that?
Absolutely. And I think really, and on the other side, I think when you look at because as we mentioned earlier, there was a bit of frustration. Even Kelsey decided he wanted to dust his old coach. If it was anybody else, he would have been benched, but he would have been benched without a shadow of a doubt. But because he's Travis Kelsey, he stayed in the game, and thankfully we saw him later on in the game. And I think partly why he was starting to get touches was because where Greenlaw would have been, they had the Burks, who was unfortunately couldn't keep up with the lad, could he?
No, you're right. Yeah, no, obviously, in hindsight, I'm sure. Not long after we all seen that, I'm sure Travis did apologise to Andy Reid. He hadn't had any touches up to that point. He was obviously getting frustrated with the fumble, and he was open a few times and Pat hadn't seen him. So he was obviously getting wind up. Yes, you don't go up to your coach like that, push them and nearly get yourself in trouble. But at the same time, it just shows, how much he wanted it. That he was frustrated, and he knows what he can do in them areas. And like you said, thankfully, he wasn't benched, because especially, late in the third quarter onwards, he was very much involved in getting us down the pitch. So fantastic player. I heard all of the Swiftie fans were on Twitter saying, leave him, look at him, leave him. But what do they know? They listen to shit music.
Well, to put it this way, if you say that, look at the bad stats though. In the playoffs now, Travis Kelce is only second to Jerry Rice in terms of yards and touchdowns. So I think that speaks for itself, really. And I would happily, even as a neutral, repost that on Twitter and say, okay, there you go, Swifties. Has your tight end put out those kind of numbers? I doubt it. But as you said, yeah.
I was just saying, just reply to them, shake it off, innit?
Shake it off, absolutely. Shake it off, and absolutely, you just got to shake it off. But as you said, look, we found that the Chiefs were getting frustrated, in the first half, but as you say, they were keeping it close and going back to the sort of defense earlier in the game. Just wow. I mean, they had their chances, but they kept them close. They kept them close, and we spoke off the. If it was one guy, if it wasn't one guy making the play, it was somebody else. I think for me, we spoke about him last week, and I actually feel quite smug this week because I picked out Carl after said he seemed to be he's forcing the fumble, he's sort of making tackles for losses really, but he was just one of many parts in that game. I think there were a couple of times where Purdy probably had a shot for the end zone, but Chris Jones had something to say about that, come crashing through the middle.
No, yes, but as you said, and rightly so, Carl Aftis has probably been maybe not had as many sacks as Chris Jones or anything like that, but he stood out a lot more. And, we expected from Chris Jones, but I think really this season, he's come into his own as one of the good frontline defensive players. He's a fantastic player. When he went down, I think it was in the fourth, he went down, and I was like, well, no, get him back up, because we couldn't afford to lose him because we'd already lost before the games. The likes of Dana and a few others had dropped. So it was important that they stayed on it. Him and Chris Jones, like you said, they were coming in, they were leaving it on Brock Purdy after he'd thrown it. So that's what you've got to do. And as you said, lots of times he was throwing it deep Purdy, and you thought Jennings or Ayuk were going to get it, and the likes of Edwards and McDuffie, they were outstanding. And the secondary for the Chiefs has been the outstanding part, and they're all in their second season really. So they, if we can keep them, obviously, as it goes in the NFL these days, you don't normally keep all of them, but if you can keep some of them there, that, like I said, McDuffie needs to be a mainstay. He's very much in the mold of the honey badger for me. I love him there. He makes all them big plays, either at the line of scrimmage or in the secondary. So they've got to keep a hold of him. But lots of moving pieces. There's going to be a few moving on. There's talk of Willie Gay moving on and a few others, which will be sad because he's a great player. But the Chiefs defense, as I said at the start of the show, and that's the reason we made it to the Super Bowl. Everyone knows that our offense has not been clicking as it has in previous years because of the pieces that we've lost. And obviously Mahomes not knowing what his best pieces are really, with a few of them not making big plays, but they came good obviously in this game. But that Chiefs defense has been unbelievable. Everyone talks about other defenses in the league, the 49ers and the Ravens and so on, the Browns, but that Chiefs defense has been outstanding.
They have, and even people who probably I wouldn't have expected, because as you said, you had some injuries on the line where, you would have expected Menahu to have been a big part. Unfortunately, he was lost the week before, but then people like Pennell came in and he stepped up and he played and he was solid. But McDuffie was just, for me, I think. I think, Pat, if it wasn't for the fact that he had that third down drive, the third quarter drive, which I'll come on to in a second, I think there was some big shouts for some of your defenders to get the shout for the MVP, because I would have certainly have put McDuffie in there, because they were even getting Jennings to throw touchdowns because the defense were playing so well. And it's like Sneed. Sneed, he's probably been one of the better corners really for the last couple of seasons. Chris Jones has been everywhere. And for me, even probably somebody who probably doesn't get, again, one of those guys who probably didn't get much attention. I noted Leo Chanel being in the backfield a number of times, sort of blowing plays up really. But yeah, I think Pat's got the award for just because the selectors are the most unimaginative bunch, and it always goes to the quarterback. But speaking of, because as we said, look, the game even coming up to halftime, really close. But what you said, if you put the game is always about momentum, isn't it? And then third quarter, then we start to see the magic happen. And I felt like that third quarter was really what kicked you guys off. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, definitely, mate. Obviously, I said to my mate at the time, without that forced fumble, we're probably not talking about a Chiefs win, I don't think. But the guy you mentioned, Chanel, he was the guy up there chasing. He was the one doing the action. He is brilliant. And but yeah, like you said, forced fumble, we get the ball turned over, and then MBS obviously steps up with a little pop pass from Mahomes, and he managed to keep all of it just today, which over there, because his hands are one of the things, funny enough, for a wide receiver, I don't think he does too well with. So yeah. That obviously started the drive in, but obviously, when Pat started running, scrambling because there was nothing else on, made some brilliant first downs, and the fourth quarter, which really drove us up the pitch, and the defense were getting them 3 and out. We were helped a lot by the 49ers, I think, as well, man. But Mahomes was outstanding. He knows what he needs to do, drove them forward, and from that point, I know they scored a touchdown in the fourth quarter to get the game, to be a field goal away from what, obviously Butker stepped up to level it up. But yeah, I thought the same. I thought from the third quarter, end of the third quarter on, it definitely did seem like it was swaying more towards us. And then over time, it was just all about us, really.
Yeah, and speaking of field goals, really, I'm really, really glad we're not sat here talking about the record field goals that were kicked in this game and not touchdowns. But you've got to give it to Butker. There were some big kicks he had to make. So that 57-yarder, I mean, he kicked it and he had room to spare as well.
Yeah, no, he's brilliant. He's one of the captains of the team, and that's why he's he's outstanding. I think Tucker's probably, as I joke with you about quite often, he's probably the best kicker in the league. But I think the most consistent is Butker by a mile. I think he's missed about 2 kicks in 2 years. He's just, you put him there, you put the kick down, and as long as the snap's okay, that's going over. So yeah, he's outstanding, and that's what helps, and that's what, if you're thinking about the Dolphins game, obviously, which was cold conditions, it was all about the field goals in that game. Really, his field goals kicked the Dolphins out of range. So yeah, this is what he does, and we all know, Pat knows, and Andy Reid knows, that if there's going to be any issues and we're not finding the drives on the pitch, if it's in range, he's going to get 3 points for us.
Absolutely, and and it's just he's consistent, but then it's those kicks in the clutch as well, which he was battling out with a very, very, very good kicker on the other side as well, and they were both equally matched. And I think you can only say on the only criticism to the other kicker was that you had that extra point, which was blocked, really, which could have ended up, and really was a big turning point in the game.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, my friend doesn't like him, Jack Mooney. He wasn't a fan. Obviously, he kicked that big one, but that was the difference. If he kicks that PAT, then they win 2019. So it is a big difference, and they've got to have that steal. It was obviously wasn't a kick really that should have been blocked either from that close range, but yeah, I think he just Buck has been there. Obviously, Moody's a rookie, so he's not been there. He's not experienced it, and obviously that's cost him in the end. But he did have a good game. He did still kick everything else. That was the only one he missed. So yeah, two good kickers. But yes, I think experience told in when it came down to it.
Absolutely, and you think really it was just. Yeah, and then it's just seemed to, and then from I think from there you sort of you never look back, and then you've got you sort of getting into the third quarter, and you start. I felt like really things were starting to change, and you put the pressure on the Chiefs really. Oh, sorry, you put the pressure on the 49ers, and really just get into overtime, and as we said earlier, finally after a slow start, Kelsey gets going, and every other people really started to get in, but Kelsey was really your number one man to kick this off. But along with probably, I think the really the huge key in that game was Pat using his feet to gain those hard yards.
Yeah, he did. It was a couple of third downs and fourth downs where we weren't. It was game over if we didn't get them, and Pat was managing just to break tackles to get over the chains. So yeah, Pat Mahomes was the difference. But yeah, Kelsey started taking catches third quarter on, and he went back to what he's been doing this season. Really, Kelsey, Rashee Rice in the slot, getting hard yards. Even the likes of Noah Gray and Justin Watson got big plays in there as well in the fourth quarter. And like I said, obviously McCall Hardman getting the most important one at the end, obviously, and he wasn't even with us at the start of the season. But yeah, I think it's just trusting that offense with Pat. He needs to trust you if you're going to get the ball, and obviously when it comes down to it in overtime, and obviously in the later part of the game when we needed points, yeah, straight back to Kelsey or Rice, and if he can't get them too, then he's using his feet.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely, and I think he probably doesn't get enough credit for his feet as well, because once he gets going, he's a hard boy to bring down. He is a hard boy to bring down, and I just think, to be honest, for me, it was no surprise really. And if you look back from probably it's probably as far as back as Christmas Day really, where things were a little bit shaky, and it was still, it's been that like that all season where they haven't quite sort of managed to get the offense to flow. The defense has always been there really, but even from that Christmas Day, it doesn't matter if it looked ugly or it hasn't quite worked, but they've constantly come out and they've managed to find a way to get the job done. And really, they were bitten probably for all those 3 games in between that time. They were written off. Buffalo written off, Baltimore written off, but yeah, we won't go there. And even into it to some extent, in some sort of 49ers, to a certain extent written off. But when we go back and we look at, okay, just that overtime drive. That was not helped by a fumble. That was right from your own, right from your own end zone down the pitch. What a drive that was.
Yeah, and that's what he does. That's what he's able to do. He finds guys who can get the hard yards. The 49ers obviously didn't care if we got a field goal, so they were just hanging back a bit. Though they mentioned on commentary, they were having 5 back, and they were thinking, well, should you be doing this against Mahomes now when the game's on the line? And they obviously shouldn't have. But yeah, some strange decisions from them in overtime. I heard some of the 49ers players have come out and said they didn't know the rules. Which was funny because they told them the rules before the overtime started.
Yeah.
So Yeah, bit strange that Shanahan wouldn't have told all his teams right if it goes to overtime, because obviously in a Super Bowl you have to have that on the table just in case. So yeah, they just seemed to play the 40. I think it was more like, that's why I said a minute ago. I think we were brilliant. Mahomes was brilliant, and the boys all stood up and they did brilliant. But they were helped out after the game. You know, if you think of even in the third quarter when Purdy just stopped using McCaffrey and started trying to throw it. That was playing right into our hands. Our secondary's outstanding. Keep doing that all day, we're fine. They weren't doing it, so that helped us come back into the game because they were going 3 and out all the time. Yeah, like I said, the defense kind of just ended up being a bit standoffish fourth quarter and in overtime. So yeah, I think we were helped out a lot, even though they were outstanding as well.
Do you think, and we spoke about a little bit last week, Purdy has had this little bit of a stigma against him, saying he's a bit of a system quarterback and he can't do it if he hasn't got this, hasn't got that. Do you think that's still fair? But because to a certain extent, I would say no, because despite they didn't sometimes they didn't get over the whitewash, but they made some hell of a throws in that game.
Yeah, no, I disagree with that. I think we have said that, I think the difference is it's the experience. I think Mahomes has been there a few times. He's done it. He knows what you need to do when you're in sticky situations. But I thought Purdy had an amazing game. Like I said, apart from that 5-10 minutes in the third quarter where he stopped going to McCaffrey and started trying to take it on himself, I think the rest of the game he was brilliant. He was, we joked about the Jennings touchdown, but a good play to get that sorted and get it, and noticing that McCaffrey had all that space over the other side. He was making throws to Jennings third down when it looked like the 49ers were done and they were going 3 and out again, and he was making big plays. And once they went behind to us when we did score that touchdown and go ahead, he had the steel to come back and make throws to get them back in front. So no, I think Brock Purdy, obviously there's lessons to be learned. I think any losing team are going to say that. But no, I think that Shanahan's found his quarterback. I do like Purdy. I think he's a good quarterback. And yes, maybe he doesn't do the off-script things that maybe a Mahomes and a Josh Allen do. But, if it works for San Francisco, he doesn't need to do that. He just needs to trust his arm and obviously get his pieces moving.
Absolutely, and I totally agree with you as well. I think the stigmatism has been, has been unreasonable, really, because he did really perform well under pressure, and had he made that when they were first and 10 in the overtime and they had made that throw, could we have been talking about a different result here in overtime? So this is small margins. It's not like they've had their tails kicked in this game. It's small margins, and we have to look at a little bit at some of the play calling as well, which down the stretch, you're right, and you've hit the nail on the head with McCaffrey was being used, was really questionable by Kyle Shanahan, if you look, in my opinion, because I thought Kittle was going to be in an action. He was nowhere to be seen until the second quarter, and even Jusic, I think, even eventually had a touch here or two, and where was Ayuk? I mean, where were all these guys? And I think that plays a little bit of a compliment to how well your boys were playing on the other side. But it just felt like they were just, where were they? They just weren't to be seen. Yeah,
no, you're right. I think the only one who can really put their hands up and say they had a good game with Jennings, and I think on the offense, obviously, the offensive line did their job to protect Purdy and stuff like that. But yeah, it was strange. I think Ayuk had a few chances and he missed. But yeah, Kittle especially, Kittle's the guy, just like for us with Travis Kelce, Kittle's the guy who's going to make them yards that, it seems like a player's not on, and he's going to make them. He's a strong guy. You probably have the best 2 tight ends in the NFL in that game. So, yeah, it was very strange. I think Caption came up in the third quarter. He'd had 1 touch.
One touch.
When you're thinking that he's one of the best players in the world, and you're not throwing the ball to him. But yeah, I'm not sure whether Shanahan, Purdy, obviously Purdy's the one who's got to see it on the pitch. But yeah, if Shanahan's choosing not to hit him to try and hit other people, then that is very strange. Because, like you said, even when early on, when Purdy was throwing it, he was throwing it to McCaffrey in a slot, or he was throwing it out like that. You know, again, Debo didn't have his best game again. You know, he tried a few times. They found him in the slot, but not a lot. So yeah, I think the only one on the offense, apart from Purdy, the only attacking receiver who can have anything to shout about was Jennings, I think. And yeah, some of that is to do with maybe the receivers not finding the space, and some of it is to do with the play calls that they've made, which maybe made it hard for the likes of Kittle and I to find space.
Absolutely, and yeah, and I'm glad you mentioned space, because I'm going to pick on one of your old boys, Charvarius Ward. Unfortunately, he had a bit of a howler right at the end of the game, didn't he? Where I think, unfortunately, Hardman managed to juke him out of his pants, really, which was, you know, and I think it was a little bit of a taste of the 49ers on his own medicine as well, with all the motion that they used to confuse other teams. Kansas decided to do it a little bit themselves, and he ended up in no man's land, and Rico Harmon runs in to seal the deal.
Yeah, like I said, it's a bit fairy tale end for him. You know, don't know if he's going to be there next season. Who knows? He hasn't really been involved a lot during the year, so for him to come out and obviously, like we said, he took that in the third quarter or second quarter. He took that long bomb from Mahomes down the field, and he's the only guy who can really do that. He was the only one back a few years ago who was similar to Tyreek, but it just never kind of worked out for him. But yeah, obviously, I was happy when Charvarius Ward went. He was, I know Andy Reid and the Chiefs loved him, but for me, he always used to get caught on pass interference for wide receivers constantly. He just didn't seem to be able to work out, you know, when to be smart and when not to do it. So, yeah, obviously, he's not going to be happy about that. Or he probably will be happy because he does love the Chiefs, but he won't be happy that it's cost his team that. But yeah, I think just the whole of that drive in overtime, no one on that 49ers defense had really anything to shout about. I think, like I said, very strange for them to be dropped off. You had plays where Nick Bosa wasn't in, and it was just a weird overtime drive. I was expecting it to be a field goal and then see what happens. Next score wins. But then the only thing I didn't know about overtime was that it went to a second quarter.
It did, yeah.
What's going on here?
I know. I just thought I thought I was going to be late for work in the morning. This game was going to be going on for so long, but yeah, I was surprised about that, really. And you think, I sympathise with the players at that point, because they've been knocking lumps out of each other now for hours, and I think even when you look at that drive which the Chiefs managed to put together, that 49ers defense looked gassed. They looked gassed. There were a lot of hands on hips at that point, and I think they were just about running out of steam. And I think, unfortunately, it showed, really. But yeah, the overtime was a funny one. But I'm going to leave you. Well, 3 seems to be the magic number with this game, because Pat's got 3 Super Bowls. He's got 3 MVPs. He's also he threw 333 yards in that game, and I found out this week that 333 Al Davis Drive is the address of the Super Bowl they just played. So so 3 seems to be the magic number. But question for you: do you think this team can have another run of it next year?
It's going to be hard next year, I think. You know, there's still questions about Andy Reid's future. You know, I know Travis said that he's going to come back again for another year at least. You know, Mahomes obviously still going to be there, but it depends on the pieces. If we lose a few on defense, obviously they're going to need to be replaced in the draft. And yeah, we definitely need something on offense, because, like I said, I expect Hardman to go. It's talk that Edwards-Helaire off as well now, because obviously we've got Pacheco as our main guy. And yeah, some guys who I thought would have more of a breakout year. Did like Sky Moore, he had a decent year, but wasn't used at all. What I seen in the Super Bowl. So I don't know about next year. The Bills are going to be there again next year. Ravens look good. I know you've lost a few coaches and stuff, but I still expect you to be there next year. Some of them rookies that had good seasons for you this year, they're going to be even better now going on. So yeah, I still think it's going to be a tough, and I don't think we'll be stupid as it sounds, just like we weren't favourites in the playoffs this year. I don't think we will be next year as well, because I think there still will be games where we lose and we shouldn't lose. So yeah, I don't know. It depends on the other teams for me. See how the Ravens and the Bills do for us getting to a Super Bowl. See how many of them players the 49ers keep. Obviously the Eagles are going to lose players as well. I think the AFC is definitely going to be the winner of the Super Bowl for the next few years. But I don't know whether it's going to be us. I think they definitely will end up. Mahomes is going to end up with more than 3. I just don't know whether or not that's going to be next year. They're very confident of the 3-peat, but I don't know. It's going to take a lot. It's going to take a lot, and hopefully Andy Reid gives us at least another year.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think that will be the key. And yeah, as you said, the 49ers, they've as soon as that payday comes for Purdy, that team just starts going to be stripped away, and with all the, I think it was sort of 9 Pro Bowlers and 12 alternates on that team, can't afford to keep everyone. That's just not going to work. But I think what you do have on your side is this Chiefs team is young, and there's a lot of young pieces on there, but they'll also need to, for the people who are young but they're coming to the end of their rookie deals or the second year contracts, they're going to be they're probably looking for bigger paydays. So that is something. Yeah. Offense, absolutely, you definitely need a bit of help, and I think what it goes to show I think it stuck out like a sore thumb, really, how much of a presence Tooney is to that team, really. Perhaps a little bit of help on an offensive line as well, if when it comes to the draft, if outside looking in. Yeah. But you've got the back-to-back now. The first time it's done in 20 years. But the Patriots were the last people to do it. But yeah, it's going to be a tough ask. But I think you've got the Reid and the Mahomes, and I think they're always going to give you a run for your money when you've got those two, regardless of who else, whatever you've got around you. And really, Kelsey, he's starting to get some miles on his tires now. Is he going to be, coming more to the end of his career? Really, still playing at a high level, but for how long? But I think would I think this team could give it a run at it again? Depends how I think this off season will be key. Really, depends how they handle that. But I'm sure we'll be certainly talking about them at least throwing their weight around in the playoffs so far. But for the 49ers, I'm less confident about them because of the cap situation, really. Yeah, a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, agree, mate. Yeah, going to be interesting now. Like you say, the off-season draft coming up, free agency. It's going to be interesting to see who gets where the big players go, and yeah, see what happens. Obviously, when you get to the Super Bowl, unfortunately, you get the lower end of the draft, but at the same time, it didn't work out too bad one with Pacheco, so we'll have a look.
Well, you once upon a time you found Tyreek Hill in the 5th round, so there's value everywhere. And look at Puka Nacua, who was so sensational this year, a 5th round pick. So don't overlook the later rounds, is all I say. Well done, guys. Thank you. This is all we've got time for this week. Thank you very much again for everybody who's been listening and been following us, and we really do appreciate it. It's mad to think how quickly this season has gone, but please stay tuned because there will be extra content from us between now and in the off season leading up to the draft and free agency. So please stay tuned and keep us a like and a follow and see what we're up to. But Rick, again, congratulations. Thanks very much for joining me this week. And hopefully we'll be on it in the near future.
Yeah, cheers, mate. Yeah, hopefully we'll be back to a full complement next time as well.
Absolutely, when Ashley has stopped from doing a runner.
That's right. Right, cheers, mate.
Cheers, mate.